Making products for tomorrow, demonstrating and validating leadership with Cradle to Cradle Certified version 4. I wish you all on the line happy and healthy times ahead. If you have any questions for our speakers today or for us at the Institute, please note them in the question section and we will get to them at the end of the webinar. I'm just going to give a couple more seconds for people to join. I realize I started a little bit early. Okay, just waiting for everyone to join us. Again, thank you for making the time today during your lunch hour. Maybe it's the end of the day in Europe, or maybe early morning on the West Coast. Okay. So today you will hear from two pioneers in building product manufacturing and how they are demonstrating their positive impact for a safe and circular future through their use of Cradle to Cradle Certified for over 10 years. But before I pass it over to my friends, Rachel and Kellie, my name is Bergen Hubert, and I am the Built Environment Lead at the Cradle to Cradle Products Innovation Institute. I work with building product manufacturers and their suppliers, members of the A&D community, owners and developers, and various like-minded partners to try to increase the number of Cradle-to-Cradle certified products and specifications, but more broadly, safe and circular materials in the built environment. For those of you who are not familiar with the Institute, we are an independent global nonprofit founded in 2010 and are rooted in the cradle-to-cradle design philosophy. We have team members across the United States and Europe with headquarters in both San Francisco and Amsterdam. At the Institute, our mission is to help create a world where safe materials and products are designed and manufactured in a prosperous circular economy to maximize the health and well-being for people and the planet. Realizing this vision requires partnering with every member of the value chain to demonstrate what is possible if we embrace innovation to rethink, redesign, and remake the products that we all depend on. To achieve this vision requires a paradigm shift. Traditional linear or take, make, waste design approaches place a particular focus on considering and meeting the needs of the end user. If we are to design for the circular economy, we need to look much wider than this, considering not only the user, but the system within which the design will exist. This means understanding the impact of our design on stakeholders and building in feedback loops to help identify and address the unintended consequences of our design decisions. Circular or cradle-to-cradle design really challenges us to see everything as a resource for something else in a biological or technical cycle, eliminating the concept of waste. Consumables like cleaning agents or biodegradable packaging, they circulate in a biological cycle to which they can be safely reintroduced after use. Consumer goods such as electronics or flooring circulate in a technical cycle. These products have been optimized during their design and manufacturing processes as material resources for their next service life as new products. This paradigm shift reveals opportunities to improve quality, increase value, and of course, spur innovation. Materials and products are ubiquitous. We want the materials used to create our world to not just be less bad, but to positively impact human health, the climate, the environment, and society. We want to take less and give more. We cannot achieve this goal alone, and it cannot happen overnight. Through the deliberate design, manufacture, and then selection of materials and products, we have the ability to reduce human exposures to toxic chemicals, make communities healthier and more equitable, and of course, protect our world today and over time. How we can activate and implement this vision is Cradle to Cradle Certified. The newly released last year, version 4 of Cradle to Cradle Certified is the world's most ambitious, actionable standard for products made for tomorrow, ensuring that they are safe, circular, and responsibly made. Cradle to Cradle certification is an independently awarded third-party certification with transparency, rigor, and innovation at its core. Unlike other certifications, which tend to focus on a singular measure of sustainability, Cradle to Cradle Certified assesses all aspects of product design and manufacturing. The first two categories address the materials in the product, so how they are designed and sourced. That's material health, ensuring materials are safe for humans and the environment, and product circularity. That's enabling a circular economy through regenerative process and product design. Then the other three categories that you see here address how the product is manufactured. That's clean air and climate protection, protecting clean air, promoting renewable energy, and reducing harmful emissions, water and soil stewardship, safeguarding clean water and healthy soils, and social fairness, respecting human rights and contributing to a fair and equitable society. The five categories are underpinned by both qualitative and quantitative requirements and translate beyond product into company and supply chain. Receiving Cradle to Cradle Certified is a notable achievement, one that demonstrates a deep commitment to enabling a world that is healthy, equitable, and sustainable. By comprehensively protecting environmental health and promoting human well-being, accelerating circular design and circular data reporting, managing carbon holistically through energy use, greenhouse gas emissions, and embodied carbon impacts, driving social responsibility practices and equity, and enhancing collaboration, transparency, and accountability across the supply chain. You'll hear more on this from our speakers today. Cradle to Cradle Certified is an innovation and validation framework for transforming sustainability commitment into action. The two companies you'll hear from today committed to this transformation over a decade ago and have and will continue to prioritize action across critical aspects of sustainability, enact roadmaps for change from product innovation to operations, transform their business models, systems, and collaboration throughout the value chain, verify sustainability performance and measure their progress over time, and ultimately lead industry transformation towards a safe, circular, and equitable future. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to our first speaker, Kellie Ballew of Shaw Industries.
Thank you so much, Bergen. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Kellie Ballew. I'm Vice President of Global Sustainability at Shaw Industries. And like Bergen said, I'm here to share our journey. I called it V0 to V4 because it is a long tenured journey. Maybe dare I call it an adventure with the Cradle to Cradle Certified Products Program and our certifications. And with our most recent experience certifying EcoWorks carpet tile under the new V4 standard. So before I get ahead of the topic today, let me take a moment just to tell you a little bit of background about who Shaw is. Shaw Industries is a $6 billion flooring provider and a wholly owned subsidiary of Berkshire Hathaway. Our company has really grown from our origins in North Georgia more than half a century ago. We built on our legacy of carpet manufacturing to now including floor coverings for every possible place and space. We serve both the residential and commercial markets around the world through more than a dozen customer-facing brands. But we're so much more than a flooring company. We're focused on making a positive impact in the world to create a better future for our associates, our customers, and for the communities where we operate. And we do this by putting people at the center of what we do. It's what we call sustained human ability, figuratively and literally putting people at the heart of our sustainability efforts. And one way we live this commitment is through cradle to cradle design, quite honestly. And our long relationship with the certification process, the institute, our assessor, and all the pieces of the puzzle required to get a product certified to the Cradle to Cradle Certified Product Standard. Shaw's been making carpet for a long time, more than 50 years actually. But during the late 1990s, commercially, we were still pretty small and new to the carpet tile business. And we were motivated to bring something new to the market. Everyone had a PVC-backed carpet tile, and we did too. But we challenged ourselves to design a carpet tile that was different, PVC-free, and fully recyclable by us. And we wanted to be the first flooring manufacturer to do it. Of course, it had to perform, it had to be cost effective, and we had some folks in our operations that were inspired by the concepts of green chemistry in the very early days of Cradle to Cradle. So we set out on a mission to use the Cradle to Cradle design philosophy to innovate a brand new carpet tile, a carpet tile type even. And with EcoWorks, we did just that. In 1999, we launched EcoWorks, the industry's first fully recyclable PVC-free carpet tile. And keep in mind, this launch occurred well before the Cradle to Cradle Institute or well before there was a product certification, before all that was really envisioned. It really was just a philosophy. When Cradle to Cradle evolved into what is now this product certification, EcoWorks became the first flooring product of any kind to achieve Cradle to Cradle certification. It was one of the very first products globally to be certified, and this was back in 2005. Today, almost 90% of the products we manufacture are Cradle to Cradle certified. It's a commitment we made to not only differentiate ourselves in the market, but to help verify the work we do to manufacture products that support the health and well-being of people in the planet. As an enterprise, Shaw has the most certified platforms of any manufacturer of any product type in the world. So here we are, 2022, but back in 2021, we became the first flooring manufacturer to have a product for the built environment certified to the new V4 standard. And currently, we have the only product in the built environment that has completed the certification. And what we're so proud of also is that we achieved V4 Silver, currently the only product of any kind to achieve this level as well. So that's a lot of onlys and that's a lot of firsts. And we're so very proud to be the leader showing that it can be done. Our keen focus on designing and manufacturing products that support the health and well-being of people and the planet has been an integral part of our business for more than 20 years. And the enhanced criteria of the Cradle to Cradle product standard pushes us to continually improve. Let's touch on a few key areas of enhancements we've made over the years before we dive into, say, those 5 pillars and how we went about achieving V4. Over the past 2 decades, we've done significant work to stay up to date with Cradle to Cradle's evolution. Here's just a small sampling of some of those requirements and improvements we've made, which range from, let's just call it ingredient changes, like removing antimicrobials back in 2013, to streamlining our manufacturing processes and installing on-site renewable energy like our solar array, also in 2013, to enhancements in our reclamation process and changing the scale of that process, expanding it to other facilities and the like. The takeaway here is that EcoWorks of today is much different than it was in 1999, while still remaining so very true to its beginnings. Honestly, we couldn't have achieved V4 without all of these changes over the years, without an intentional focus and attention and supply chain engagement to stay aligned at every point in the evolution of the program. So what were some of Shaw's specific successes to meet the enhanced criteria for V4? Product transparency is not only something that's important to us, but for our commercial customers especially, it's really an expectation. Our work to understand every ingredient and its impact to both people and the planet is a business standard we've set for ourselves. The detailed rigor of the Cradle to Cradle standard is a guidepost we use for product development at Shaw. So while knowing the ingredient makeup of our products and their impacts wasn't new for us with V4, the biggest shift within material health was to move from this concept of a banned list to the restricted substances list. And not only were there new chemicals that were introduced with the restricted substance list, but there were also changes in the threshold levels and thresholds by chemical. So this required us to educate our supply chain on this change and reobtain fresh documentation and formulation disclosure to both Shaw and our Cradle to Cradle assessor. This work gives us assurance and pride that EcoWorks met the criteria and does not contain chemicals known to pose serious risks to human health or the greater ecosystem. As it relates to both material health and product circularity, Bergen talked about how those are really connected. One area where we worked with the Institute was around their V4 criteria for recycled content testing. I just shared that all of our raw material ingredients are assessed against the RSL. But with V4, there is a requirement to test recycled content against that RSL too. And so there are not a ton of labs yet that have done this work. And so we worked with the Institute and the labs to really forge that path. I've already shared the design criteria that EcoWorks was meant to be recycled at the end of its life. So the requirements of the product circularity pillar and how we, that wasn't the hugest hurdle compared to some of the other parts of V4. We did work to provide detailed plans of how we will further promote our return reclamation program in order to get back even more pounds of that product at the end of its life. And to date, Shaw has reclaimed and recycled almost 1 billion pounds of carpet, including EcoWorks. Version 4 did require us to work with our fibers manufacturing division and our commercial brands to ensure that all of our nylon we manufacture has more than 0% recycled content. As the world's largest manufacturer of nylon carpet fiber, we were able to adjust our existing yarn offerings to achieve this criteria. And we also used it as an opportunity to launch a new yarn system with 100% post-industrial recycled content, EcoSolution Q100. This satisfies not only the product circularity requirements, but it also helps contribute to low embodied carbon as part of clean air and climate protection. So some more details about clean air and climate protection, as well as align with our enterprise-wide goals. Shaw has been committed to lowering carbon emissions and using clean renewable energy for more than a decade. In addition to using that new yarn system I mentioned, EcoSolution Q100, which drives beyond operations to now talking about embodied carbon of products, Shaw invested in a 1 megawatt solar array atop our carpet manufacturing facility back in 2013. We made all of our commercial carpet operations carbon neutral in 2018, and we met our 2030 greenhouse gas intensity reduction goals 9 years early. And that was in 2021. So also in 2021, we started offering carbon neutral products through our commercial brands, Shaw Contract and Packcraft. Within the soil and water and soil stewardship pillar, V4 requires a deeper understanding of water effluent, including how processed chemicals also comply with the RSL, the restricted substances list. This required us to obtain data from water treatment facilities and to educate our manufacturing leaders on all the requirements of water and soil. Here, Cradle to Cradle required us to look at the chemistry of our process auxiliaries that don't actually end up in products, but to make sure that we are protecting the ecosystems where our operations are located. And as part of our ongoing work in this area, we've improved our water efficiency by more than 35%, and we use over 14% of our water usage from recycled and reused sources. As a company, we strive for an environment where all ideas are heard and valued, and we have an expectation of inclusive leadership at every level of the organization. Knowing that diversity, equity, and inclusion are necessary for innovation and growth, we have 8 associate resource groups to allow for understanding and support of all people. The social fairness pillar of Cradle to Cradle ensures that business operations honor all people and natural systems that are affected by the manufacturing of a product, and to provide a qualitative measure of the impact of that product's manufacturer on the people and the community. So that includes thinking well beyond our 4 walls as Shaw. but our global supply chain, including ethical practices like protecting human rights, providing safe labor practices, fair wages, and so much more. And actually, the social fairness requirements of V4 were probably the most time intensive for us. We have long work to ensure that associates are treated fairly, and we have opportunities for learning and connection and development. In fact, Shaw is a UN Global Compact signatory, and we got our supply chain to adopt those critical principles. But V4 required even more intentional engagement with Tier 1, Tier 2 suppliers to understand human rights policies and social data. This took substantial time as we had to educate them on what we needed, why we needed it, and to work with them to gather the data. And in some cases where they didn't have the data, Shaw actually had to go in and audit our supply chain. And while this work is so much more significant in V4, it's great to see the push for all manufacturers seeking cradle to cradle certification to put this component in with such rigor, to have business operations honor people and natural systems. I think this is really a critical upgrade between V3 and V4. So it was a hard one, but it was certainly worth it. So while intensive and sometimes maybe a laborious journey, we are so very proud of our work to achieve the Cradle to Cradle certification V4 pilot. This process offered opportunities to engage with the Institute and give feedback on the standard as it was going through the upgrade, to maybe make adjustments and understand how manufacturing works, but also pushing all manufacturers to do better, to do more, which in the end is what we all want, right? I mean, to create a world where the products we manufacture have a positive impact on the occupants' health and well-being. In addition to achieving V4 on our EcoWorks product, our work in the pilot also allowed us to launch our very first Cradle to Cradle Gold collection to the V3 standard with Packcraft's product Reverse. Just another example of how we continue to push ourselves higher and higher and offer solutions to our customers that meet the needs in terms of personal, firm goals, or achieving specific building certifications. So I know this was fast-paced and a lot to take in. So I do hope I helped highlight Shaw's journey and our commitment to cradle design and the emphasis that we place on to meet each of the requirements. This gives Shaw's customers the confidence that Cradle to Cradle certified products have been assessed and verified as safe for people and the planet. Bergen and the Institute, I want to thank you for inviting Shaw here today. And I'm really honored to pass the torch on to Rachel at Mecho to tell us about their journey on the pilot. So, hi, Rachel.
Hi, Kellie. Thanks so much. Oh, hi, Kellie. Here I am. Thank you for taking us through your process and demonstrating your amazing work. My name is Rachel Berkin, and I am the Sustainability Program Manager for Mecho. For those of you who are not familiar with Mecho, we manufacture manual, motorized, and automated shading systems. So I'm here today to talk to you about our Cradle to Cradle V4 beta journey, or as Kellie calls it, an adventure. I think that is a pretty good terminology for this experience. And I think it's important also to point out, you'll see that there are some differences between Shaw's experience and our own based on the product. So Shaw has taken an existing product through multiple rounds of optimization. This is our first experience certifying the ElectroShade IQ2 AC and DC motorized shade system with Cradle to Cradle. So in addition to it being a new product, it is also a complex assembly, and it also has an EMC, or an externally managed component, which is the motor itself. So many of the lessons learned that we'll be talking about today relate to the experience of certifying a complex assembly with an EMC. Cradle to Cradle is a key part of our healthy building solution strategy. Here at Mecho, we've actually defined 10 strategies that outline how our shading systems can help contribute to a healthy building, which is, of course, of utmost importance today. Each of the following strategies can be used to achieve a healthy space where you can design buildings to work, learn, heal, and live. The first 5 strategies focus on the impact of the materials we use. Cradle to cradle is a key and critical component to our materials methodology. As people continue to stay indoors for longer periods of time, the health and wellness of building materials elevate in importance. We ensure our products utilize optimized chemistry, are designed for circularity, reduce impact on indoor air quality, provide optimal acoustics, and can be cleaned and disinfected. These next 5 strategies look at the impact of automated shading, which of course includes daylight. And beyond daylight, automated shading improves access to views, reduces energy consumption, enables touchless solutions in shared spaces, and most importantly, optimizes occupancy comfort. Because if people aren't comfy in a space, no amount of daylight or views will make it functional. And the electroshade system that we'll be talking about today is a key part of our automated shading systems. This timeline demonstrates our long-standing commitment to Cradle to Cradle before it was even a certification. When we first engaged with Cradle to Cradle, it was a design methodology, and we've continuously optimized our product line to align with C2C values and requirements. We'll explore this timeline a little bit deeper in the following slides. We first started applying Cradle to Cradle to our textiles, specifically EcoVale. In the late 90s, we needed to create a material that had similar aesthetic and performance qualities to a standard shade cloth. The standard shade cloth at that time is comprised of a polyester core and a vinyl jacket. And we had a lot of customers and clients who wanted to have roller shades in their space without the vinyl. So at that point, we engaged our assessor and our supplier, and we collaborated to create what is now known as EcoVale. The goal of EcoVale was to create a PVC-free, 100% recyclable shade cloth with opaque yarns. You can see the similar construction of EcoVale versus a standard shade cloth here. EcoVale was launched in the early 2000s, and it is still an important part of our collection 20 years later. EcoVale does have one constraint, and that is its inability to go above the bronze level due to flame retardant additives. Window shades in the United States have to comply with NFPA 701, which is one of the toughest flame standards out there. So we have to add chemical flame retardants to almost all of our textiles. For many years, we have worked with green chemists for a healthier additive, but these attempts have been unsuccessful. So our next step was to actually explore different materials that could be inherently flame resistant. And that's what brings us to EcoVale Sheer, which is 100% polyester. Polyester is inherently flame resistant, and this specific type of polyester doesn't require flame retardants in order to pass NFPA 701. So we launched EcoVale Sheer in 2017, and it's really exciting to have a solution for our clients and customers who want to optimize out that class of chemicals from their building supply chain. There are also other benefits to the material, such as being 100% recyclable, and it's also a little bit stronger than a standard filament polyester, and you can also weave it into interesting patterns and textures, which you can't do with every polyester yarn on the market. We've also continued to add a broader array of materials into our Cradle to Cradle portfolio, including our Chelsea Blackout, which has a material health certificate at the silver level, and AcoustiVale, which has a material health certificate at the bronze level. Textiles are typically what people think about when they think of a roller shade, but there is so much more to it than just a piece of fabric. Something needs to make those shades go up and down. And we will always highlight the textiles, but only certifying a textile does not equate to certifying a whole shade system. When you look at our collection holistically, you can see that cradle to cradle is really embedded into everything that we do. So now let's talk about our experience with the V4 beta. For our V4 beta, we applied the cradle to cradle standard to our electroshade IQ2 AC and DC motorized shade system. This is a complex assembly, as I mentioned, with an EMC, because the motor is an important part of the system. And again, that's what makes it actually go up and down. So because of the motorization component, there was extra criteria that we had to meet. So why did we choose to embark on this journey or adventure? Well, first of all, we wanted to challenge ourselves and ensure that our motorized shade systems met all the same rigor as our other hardware systems. Our manual hardware systems have been certified since around, I want to say, 2009. Our goal was always to have all of our hardware cradle to cradle certified. But interestingly enough, one of the reasons we started the certification process with our motorized shade systems with V4 is due to a new, very, very small PVC allowance in version 4. This was necessary for us due to a very, very, very small amount in PVC in our wire jacket and our motor and our EMC. And for this reason, we were not actually able to certify under version 3 because they had a complete ban on this material. So I think it's important to note that even though PVC is still very, very restricted in cradle to cradle version 4, allowing a very limited amount will enable more products to undergo this process. So this was the culprit right here that stopped us. Hold on, this was the culprit right here that stopped us from certifying under version 3. So now let's dive into a few lessons learned from our certification process. First, communication, collaboration, and education are key to a successful certification. Each category has requirements which mandate the inclusion of different stakeholders in a variety of roles at the organization. A typical product certification focuses on the product and will include touch points with engineering, product management, and marketing in some manner. But in addition to those stakeholders, it's also imperative that your senior leadership team, your human resources team, and your purchasing team are all on board and understand the journey experience that you will be embarking under version 4 and what you will be asking and looking for during this process. We kicked off version 4 with a cradle to cradle training, which including engineering, marketing, product, and in retrospect, I honestly probably should have also included human resources and purchasing. The social category, as Kellie already talked about, is very robust and requires a lot of work and alignment with your HR department. One other change is having public-facing policies and commitments. And for this requirement, I had to work very closely with both HR and my senior leadership team. The product circularity section is also built out and expanded quite a bit beyond the V3 requirements. It not only recognizes if something is recyclable, but it also recognizes how something is designed. This is extremely relevant to our product type, which is a complex system. The most complex part of cycling systems is not just the individual componentry, but it's disassembling the entire system into individual homogeneous materials. Strategically designing for disassembly at the beginning of a product's life enables a streamlined process for material separation at the end of the system's life. It also recognizes additional componentry that is supplementary to the certified product that can help with disassembly or cycling. So here we have our electro pocket, which makes it easier to reach the shade system for maintenance and repair, which in addition to reducing material waste is also just smart design. Last, working with an EMC poses its own challenges. There are certain credits where you have to meet the platinum level requirements, regardless of your final certification goal. So we are tracking for bronze, but we still had to meet platinum level requirements in certain sections. So, and for example, as a part of the product circularity section, we have to demonstrate a closed loop cycling process for the EMC. And these steps are all documented on our public-facing product circularity page. So the whole system doesn't have to meet that platinum level, but the motor itself has to have a closed loop take-back system that is well documented. So, I think there are still a lot of opportunities to expand our product circularity strategies. For examples, could our installers be hired at the end of a product's life cycle to uninstall our product? On our website, we have included our circularity data report and our disassembly instructions. So hopefully we'll be able to start seeing more shade inquiries about our take-back process. But I can say anecdotally that in the last few months, I have had more questions from specifiers about disassembly, which I think is a great sign. So again, thank you to the Cradle to Cradle Products Innovation Institute for inviting me to speak about our process today. Everything is finally submitted after a couple years of a journey. And, I'm really excited to continue the discussion over with Bergen in a conversation with Kellie and Bergen. So thank you.
Fantastic. First of all, thank you both for outlining the tremendous work you and your organizations are doing to lead the industry towards a safe and circular future. Shaw and Mecho are, in fact, making products for tomorrow. As Rachel mentioned, we are now going to move into our virtual panel discussion and a Q&A with the audience. Please start thinking of your questions and noting them in the questions section. We also had a couple come in during the presentation, so thank you for those. I just had a couple of questions to get us kicked off here. Hearing both of your sustainability journeys and firsthand experiences with the Cradle to Cradle Certified version 4 standard, do you have any tips for other organizations without giving away too much on this journey? Maybe some lessons learned. I know Rachel outlined a few. Maybe what are you going to do better or change because of your pilot experience?
So in addition to the tips that I talked about during my panel session, I think other words of advice would be to start as early as possible and engage as many stakeholders as you can prior to starting the certification work itself. Each of the 5 sections is amplified. So, for example, even if you already have material ingredients down to 100 parts per million, there are still some chemicals that require disclosure even beyond that threshold. So for this reason, you will most likely have to re-engage your supply chain. I would also make your team aware that they will most likely have to make some material changes throughout the process. I worked very closely with my engineering team on a number of solutions for very small components that were not flagged prior to this process that required us to find new materials and or suppliers. Now that the pilot is over, there are 2 things that I want to do. The first is to focus on the implementation, especially on product circularity. And the second is to help you, our audience, understand what does it mean when a product is Cradle to Cradle version 4. I also need to help both my internal team and the market understand the value and the work behind the certification.
Kellie, anything to add? Well, Rachel stole my thunder because it's definitely start early. Start earlier than you thought you needed to start. But I think great points that Shaw would also share is that the pilot for us was a great motivator and reason and driver for re-engaging our global supply chain on what we need from them. It's been a rough couple of years from a supply chain standpoint, and there are probably new players in that for all of us. And so re-engaging them in what's expected. In the past, we probably were very concentrated in that supply chain engagement, talking about material health and what we needed from a disclosure standpoint. But now to more deeply engage about social audit data, water data, and other things from their operation, that was really, really new. So start on that early because there's a huge education learning curve there to absorb. Secondly, there are some things at Shaw that we just do and have done for years, but we may not have formalized it in the form of a procedure or a documented process. And so we had to go back and maybe finalize some of that and document some things. So engaging to, you said HR and other internal partners. I think that's a really good takeaway as well. And then thirdly, that internal stakeholder engagement. You called it your training session right off the rip. That training session with those internal stakeholders about what's different between V3 and V4. For us, maybe we did that a little later, because now that we have V4, we're trying to explain it to our internal partners, because we're kind of spoiled to having Cradle to Cradle certification. And so what's different about this new one was a different bit of engagement. And we went on like a road show to manufacturing, and a road show to sourcing, and a road show to product development, and shared with them, what was different between V3 and V4. So whether you do it on the front end or do it on the front and the back, I would say those are some of my recommendations there.
Yeah, Kellie, just to echo that comment, I probably would have put more focus and emphasis on that training session. And as you said, call it a roadshow, because it really does require engagement for various internal stakeholders to actually get this through the finish line.
I was just going to add, I find it interesting that, it is a comprehensive, holistic, approach to sustainability, but it's also comprehensive and holistic from an internal engagement perspective. I mean, there's so much alignment there in that this is a comprehensive effort, that it can't happen overnight, and maybe that's a good thing. Okay, moving forward, I wanted to ask Kellie a question. Your passion for sustainability and designing products for, Cradle to Cradle certified, or just in accordance to the framework, is truly genuine and very refreshing. How do you ensure others within your own organization, exude the same level of passion and understanding when talking about Cradle to Cradle or sustainability in general?
That is such a great question, Bergen, because the sustainability team can only go so far with that, right? I mean, it has to become part of everybody's vernacular. And let's focus on our sales associates for a second. It has a lot to do with what a customer asks them for. And that gets it right up to the top of importance as a customer-centric organization. And if a salesperson's paycheck depends on making that sale or making sure that customer is satisfied and their requirements are met, people start to care, and people start to ask questions, and people want to understand it and engage in a conversation about it. But on a more personal level, I think Shaw, like many of us on the call that showed up today, it's caring deeply about changing the way things are done. You called it products for tomorrow for a reason. It's not just let's make the same products again tomorrow. It's making products differently and designing products differently and transforming your sector and your space. And so whether that's personal efforts to recycle and reuse, whether it's to purchase materials in your own personal life that have, ingredient disclosure and indoor air quality certifications, or being made with recycled content, and kind of challenging all the things you learn about Cradle to Cradle and how that translates into personal choices. People care on a personal level about sustainability right now. I think it's top of mind. It was really interesting to me, the Super Bowl commercials were all had a sustainability angle. I feel the mainstreaming of sustainability, really that shift has happened. So Cradle to Cradle for us is really that guiding North Star for us, and a commitment. I will also say, in a time of a labor market that is so constrained and challenged too, working for a company that cares about the same things as your personal values is an important element for attracting and retaining talent too. So there's a whole bunch of reasons to care.
Rachel, anything to add before I move on?
No, I think Kellie, did a really good job, and, I think Shaw's work is exemplary, and, it's engaging your team, engaging your sales team, and I think, you know, especially when it comes to the textiles and the flame retardants, and having understanding why we care about this, and understanding those material health and making those connections, I think have really, you know, solidified it and made people understand it a little bit more. I think, you know, the flame retardants is something that's, you know, we all are experiencing because we're all occupants in our own space. And so I think people are starting to feel the connection to their built environment in that way. And that I think helps as well to understand why this is so important.
Yeah. And, you know, I think, you know, historically, this built environment conversation has been centered around, you know, commercial applications. But, you know, our homes are our offices are our homes. You know, everybody has
Mm-hmm.
window shades or carpets, and making it personal. And you guys have put such an investment, you know, time, resources, money into this. I mean, we spend so much of that in the design, and obviously through certification stages, but you know, the communication, and really, you know, making sure that we are, you know, really communicating the rigor and investment and the importance, the impact, right, that you know, all of these choices have on everyone. So completely agree. And Rachel, I'm going to ask you the next question. Kind of leads into this built environment conversation. What do you feel is the biggest challenge, you know, facing, you know, our industry today? And, you know, you've outlined a lot of the work that you've done already, but, you know, any idea how we can collectively, you know, solve some of these challenges? I know
Yeah.
Cradle to Cradle is a solution, but, you know, we can obviously do better as an industry. I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
So I think there are a lot of challenges, but let's focus on one. So I think one of the biggest challenges is, you know, actually facilitating and implementing truly circular products, right? So we design for disassembly, but I think, you know, one of Cradle to Cradle's guiding principles is to talk about circularity during specification versus starting the conversation at demolition. And, you know, I'm hoping that collectively as an industry, we're able to start using technical resources, databases, in order to track products through that life cycle. So using product circularity reports, material passports, and, you know, we can use these to help foster communication, even if someone who is disassembling a product in 20 years is different than the person who installed it, you know, yesterday. So, you know, I'm really optimistic to see what types of technology tools people will be there, so that, you know, it's not like you have to go to one person's website to find my disassembly instructions, right? It will all hopefully be in a centralized location. So having easier access, centralized access, and using technology to track it. I don't know how QR codes, you know, they're kind of having a resurgence right now, right? Speaking of the Super Bowl. So, you know, I think there's a lot of things that, you know, I'm optimistic about. I also think the AI Materials Group is, you know, with their materials pledge, product circularity is a really important, is one of the main pillars that they're looking at. And so I think having an industry solution versus having siloed conversations is a key part. And I mentioned this in my panel, but, you know, I am getting more and more questions about my take back programs and processes. Our products have lifespans of 25 plus years. So it's, you know, even in a tenant improvement where, you know, everything will go, except the shades, right? Those stay typically, you know, so our products do have longer life cycles. And so I'm optimistic that, you know, having that collective work will last a longer period of time. So
what I'm hearing is unified language, right? So having some sort of common language across industry, whether that's spec requirements or benchmarking, or again that unified framework, and then that obviously takes collaboration, centralized data, all of that. And then what else did I hear? Kellie, do you want to chime in? Anything to add?
The specific, it was, you may have said specification, but getting us in before you demo to bare concrete, before you start your design process. I do feel like we have great partners in the architect and design community, but those other stakeholders in the construction and demo, the general contractors that are taking things out right now, you know, I know why you want to get to a blank slate before you bring in the next designer and the client to decide what that space is, but really there's so many valuable materials there that industry has built infrastructure around reusing, and in a time of very constrained raw materials, the time is ripe to help us get those home.
Absolutely. So bringing in teams as soon as possible, to realize that we spend so much, again, investment in creating a circular product, but we actually have to realize that it actually becomes a circular material. That sounds like a critical stage. And also unifying language, and not to reinvent the wheel. It sounds like just collaboration in general, having these conversations across different product sectors, but also different sectors in general, right? We're both considered kind of you both are considered in this built environment space, but, you know, bringing in other you know, types of products, whether it's, you know, consumer facing products like fashion or textiles, or, you know, we can all, develop these systems and databases out together. So not reinventing the wheel sounds important. Okay, so I'm going to pause for a minute and just check the audience Q&A. I want to give enough time to what has come in. So let me just check here. It looks like we have just some administrative questions. We will have the recording up on our website, hopefully in the next couple of days. We'll make sure that you all receive the link. And then there is a great question for me. There was a lot of work. There seems to be a lot of work to establish and, of course, achieve Cradle to Cradle, but curious to know how the Institute begins working on the next standard and how this information is collected to enhance each pillar of the standard. Great question. So Cradle to Cradle, the Institute, we work in a multi, stakeholder fashion. We have various, technical subgroups and stakeholder advisory councils with experts across the different categories of sustainability. Just to give you a little bit of background on this last version, I think from start to finish took about 4 years in total. That's because we want to understand where the market is and where we believe it should go. And that is a really delicate dance to try to achieve. We are also a certification for all products, which is also quite a hard effort. You see other certifications where it's centralized to cleaning products or fashion and textiles or building materials, for example. But we cover all products in that we believe that this standard should be the paramount, achievement for all products and the standard across the board. So anyways, we collect that information through that multi-stakeholder process. We actually open it up to the public in its final stages for public commenting period, just to make sure that we are being as conclusive as possible. And we finally release the new standard. Dot versions will come out of the standard as we see fit. We do have a working user guidance. So we've talked a lot about the standard, but I will say we have a user guidance, which is an attempt to kind of translate a little bit and provide more context, best practices for those requirements that Kellie and Rachel outlined, and that's an evolving document. So we hope to have contributors contribute to that over the next couple of years as more and more companies certify to version 4. We also have Built Environment User Group, which I'm happy to say that Kellie and Rachel are both a part of, where we discuss kind of these best practices within sectors. So it is a comprehensive and it is an ongoing process to make sure that the standard is still reading the market correctly and, again, pushing us all to where we want to be in the future. Okay, and I think we have time for probably one more question here. this is a good one. I think, we didn't really touch on the alphabet soup or the, kind of landscape and ecosystems that is certifications. With so many different, certifications out there, labeling programs, green certifications. How do you guys prioritize cradle to cradle, and what can we do, maybe as a community to, elevate cradle to cradle as, a preferred, certification moving forward?
I'll start. So, one thing that I think is really interesting is that Cradle to Cradle actually has a lot of the requirements of some of the other certifications already in it. So, for example, indoor air quality testing. That is a requirement. So, our motorized shade system, it has, indoor air quality testing. That is a part of the Cradle to Cradle certification. So, I'd love to see how some products have life cycle assessments or EPDs as a part of it, right? That is a part. So it's kind of the overarching umbrella, and it's an inclusive certification of everything else. So, I'd love to see how we can position, educate so that people understand more. People just see, everyone always talks about how Cradle to Cradle is the easy button, right? Before it's reliable, not from the manufacturer's perspective, from the A&D, right? That's how, if you have a Cradle to Cradle certified product, it is a reliable, trustworthy product. You know that you're getting well-documented, verified information. But what does it mean? And I think that's some of the work that we all have to do, to kind of distill that and kind of, peek beyond the cover, right? And see all the work that goes into it.
Kellie?
I'll piggyback on that. I think you're exactly right, Rachel. For us, I would just like to point out the power of the word and. And certainly, as a product manufacturer, we want to provide the certifications that the market is asking us for. But we also need to serve in the role of, you described it, Rachel, of educator and consultant to our customers and help them understand what Cradle to Cradle is. So yes, we have the thing you asked for, and let me tell you about Cradle to Cradle. Yes, we have an HPD, and let me tell you about Cradle to Cradle. Yes, we have IAQ certifications, and let me tell you about Cradle to Cradle. So that's for us how we try to get Cradle to Cradle that airtime, is to help meet the need of the market, and then become that bring extra. And the extra we bring is like you said, paramount. It's really that holistic approach to health and well-being of people and the planet, and whether that's an EPD or an HPD or a declare label or any of the other alphabets and logo soup. I think we have to have those and for a little while until people kind of make that connection, but to educate our salespeople to help pivot that conversation to bring more to the party than just what's asked.
Yeah, great way to close it. I couldn't agree more. I think with all of these pledges, with STG commitments or AIA material pledges, we really have to show that Cradle to Cradle is a validation framework for that. It is that translating that commitment into action. So couldn't agree more. It's that and conversation that we need to have. So thank you guys so much for your time, Kellie and Rachel, and thank you for attending. The webinar recording, again, will be sent to you guys in a follow-up email in the coming days, and it will be available on demand on our website and our YouTube channel. We will be sure to follow up on any questions that we didn't get time to today. Take care, everybody, and hope to see you very soon.